Wow. Here we are in season 2, because I forget what episode we left off on, of Lucy and Cory's Anti-Power Hour.
Yeah, we got renewed for season 2. Can you believe that? We ended the first one on a huge cliffhanger. It was like a really big moment, you know, kind of like Dallas when they shot JR. Reference for our younger viewers. Yeah, but luckily we are here and we're alive.
Yeah.
We're here in our corporeal form. And well, not for our listeners and viewers, we're in our sort of algorithmic form.
True.
Cyber
true.
form for them. But and not much has happened since the end of our first season.
Whenever that was.
That's mostly why we took such a long break. There wasn't much to discuss recently. The news has been slow. Lucy got a cat, which has been the most exciting thing.
I mean, I agree with that point at least. But
sure.
She's too busy guarding the stairs, so she won't come in here.
Okay, she'll be our guest later. And I have the same number of cats. No more, no less.
That's
as far as I know.
You have many more cats than I do.
No. Then I'm saying since the last time we spoke, I have the same number. You know, the amount of
I thought you were just really bad at counting for a second. And I was like,
wow. That's also true. That's also true. So we're here to discuss our favorite birds.
Yeah, we decided to start with that.
Yeah, we'll discuss our favorite birds first, and then we'll get into like less serious topics.
Birds are very serious.
I said my favorite bird's a pterodactyl, and Lucy was like, "That's not a bird."
No, not really.
And I think it's bird adjacent enough to count.
All right. So, well, my favorite bird.
Who's to say?
At least one that I am familiar, like neighbors with, is the grackle, because they. You
made that up.
No, you don't know about grackles? Apparently. Wait, did you live? You live in Houston, not Austin.
Your neighbor is a bird. Like you have them over for dinner parties. Like
I wish. Sometimes I feed them. There's a flock of grackles that seems to come back every year and hang out in the tree next to my house. And people don't like them because they make kind of not very musical sounds, and they kind of hog bird feeders, but they look kind of like oil slicks, and they have big yellow, really intense eyes, and I just think they look really cool.
Wow. Well, if that counts as a bird, then
yeah,
pterodactyl should count.
But also, all I want in life is to have a flock of crows come and live nearby and bring me shiny garbage. Like that's the American dream, my friend.
Isn't that a murder of crows, right?
Mm-hmm. That's literally the dream. Is to have crows bring you shiny garbage.
To have a murder. Why do you care about shiny garbage?
Because if a crow brings you something, that's like it's a market exchange, but it's also they will do that. People who feed them regularly, crows will bring them random trinkets and like leave them as if.
And one thing you know about you is you love random trinkets.
Well, I do actually, but
so I feel like that works out. That's a mutually beneficial exchange.
Dude, I could talk about crows and ravens. Like there are some crows on the
specifically crows and ravens
off the coast of New Zealand. Not the coast. There's an island, and they fucking take these leaves and they like bite them, and then they use them to catch bugs. It's like,
wow. So they use tools.
Tool use, yeah. It's
wow. Those are smart fellas. How long do you think we can talk about crows and ravens before our listeners turn us off?
I don't know. Maybe some crows and ravens will watch and they'll be flattered.
Yeah, we could shift our demographic for sure. Target the raven and crow demographic.
I would love to do that.
29. How long do they live? But I feel like 18 to 29 would be good market.
Probably not quite that long. I can't remember now offhand.
Birds live a long time, though. I thought
it depends. There's also a gray parrot that I watch on YouTube, and they can live like almost human level.
Do you have a parasocial relationship with this gray parrot on YouTube?
Parrot social? No, and I'm never gonna get one because it's kind of fucked up for most people to own them. But I stopped eating meat because of Alex the gray parrot mostly, so I have
Really?
to respect the
Like
parrot.
he convinced, like he showed you some videos and was like, hey.
No, there's a book by the scientist who owned Alex the gray parrot about her relationship with him, and her whole thing being like, I don't want to insult like the more strict animal rights people at all, but that's not always as accessible to people who aren't there yet. I think people who kind of implied that like the moral weight of all sort of animals is the same, and do they even think that? But like it's like a tall barrier to entry. And both this book and one time William Gillis, I feel like tweeted some things kind of along this line where it's like, even if you think like there's any moral weight whatsoever to the fact that like animals are clearly alive and have the capacity for suffering, then that's worth at least some consideration. And the scientist who owned Alex was basically like, I don't know exactly what's going on in these bird brains, but they're clearly not just instinctual robots. Like there's I don't know, and we don't actually know enough to feel confident about the way. I don't know. It worked.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm with you there. Similar views for sure. Interesting that William Gillis convinced you of something in conjunction with this parrot. The two of them combined.
I was kind of already there, but I saw that and I was like, yeah, good. Someone else is kind of saying that. It doesn't sort of have to be full on animal liberation front or not.
Speaking of animal liberation, can you hear that dog barking? I
think I might have heard a bark.
Well, I mean, it seems thematic. I think the dog heard us talking about its rights and how we should respect it as a being, and it was like,
oh, there it is. Yeah, no, he's saying that. He's saying that.
For sure. Thanks, buddy. Thanks. I'm glad we have your support on the Anti-Power Hour.
I mean, also sometimes I argue with people. People are like, well, humans are better and they're smart. I'm like, yeah, we're so smart that we can actually weigh the moral consequences of eating other things that are alive. So take that.
Yeah, there's like, I mean, there's probably a few things with like more worse with more worse arguments, I feel like, than a lot of the common arguments for that.
Plus anything where it's like, we're supposed to eat meat. I fucking hate nature and biology. Not nature. I mean, I hate certain aspects of nature, and I want to kill nature and God and biological determinism.
Well, that's a lot. I mean, that's a whole, that goes way beyond
all those things. We can keep the crows and waterfalls and
what about your neighbor bird, like your bird neighbor, and my dog neighbor that, like, for sure saving those guys for sure.
Some nature is very good, but appeals to nature, I fucking despise those in every way.
Yeah, it depends on how those sorts of arguments get used. But most of the time, just a very easy way to rationalize the status quo, or just something's the way it is, not really reflect on it that much. So
yeah, and
that for sure, I think.
And also the great internet coming together of Christian conservatives and like internet hippies was the worst alliance since the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact of 1939. Wow,
that's a great quote, like the pull for social media from our discussion right now. Did you have these ready to go? These like hot takes, like pepper them in?
Well, that one I just
that was off the cuff. That was
that was a lie. I've thought that before, but it's still true. I hate hippies. I hate God. I don't know.
I feel like sometimes I've gotten hippie-ish vibes from you, so it's funny that you. Sorry if that offends you, but like not full on, but like slightly.
Well, I believe that my glucosamine makes my chronic joint pain feel less bad, even though the FDA has not signed off on that. So every once in a while, supplements and other shit like that does work, but it doesn't work just because it's not medicine, like endorsed by the institutions. So I used to want to be a hippie, but I don't like hippies now.
I thought the FDA was kind of magic. You're telling me.
Every time I think about the FDA, I think about how libertarians used to be like, man, the FDA takes too long to sign off on drugs, and that's the problem. I miss those days.
I know. Yeah, and now that a completely insane person has gotten the reins of our public health services, and there's no better time for libertarian critiques of the FDA and related institutions.
They're busy agreeing with him.
They're busy agreeing with him. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to make America healthy again, right? Isn't that the phrase?
Yeah. Every time I go to my doctor, he like says, "Take this pharmaceutical and don't get any fresh air or exercise." I hate that. That's suspicious. Non-big pharma solutions, and I won't have you going outside in the sunshine. That's how my doctor works.
Yeah, when I go to my doctor, he specifically gives me a pill that gives me autism, and he gives me as many of these. He just tells me to just, take them by the mouthful. And I guess I don't know if it's worked yet. We'll leave it up to the viewers, but so I totally get where RFK is coming from with these doctors. These doctors.
I mean, well,
I'm just kidding, by the way.
Oh no, I mean, I apparently got that pill at some point in my life. So I don't know.
Well, there you go.
At least that's what a doctor told me one time.
You got a head start on me. I need to take some medication.
I did get the MMR vaccine as a child, so it's all coming together now. Apparently, we're going to figure out what causes autism by September. That's what our fearless overlord.
I saw that.
That's not how anything works on any level. I don't think in real science you can decide that.
Here's the deadline. Here's the deadline, okay? By this
for knowledge.
We're gonna know, and whatever it says in September, that's it. Okay.
Yeah, that's what it was.
And we're gonna go with it, and we're probably gonna ban vaccines because it's for sure gonna be those. Even though I totally am waiting for the science to come out. Yeah.
God, I hate I need that dude to fully admit that he's terrible and stop pretending that he.
Do you think, I've never thought so much that it could genuinely be some sort of eugenicist campaign, the deliberate, is it merely ignorance on the part of a few of these people who are in such powerful positions, or is it are they literally pushing stuff that they know will kill people with it because they have some distorted. Usually I'm not tempted by these incredibly negative and pessimistic readings of other people, but we've entered strange territory.
I think there's a weird sort of terrible stew of different motivations and ideas. I don't tend to think most people are I hope to kill all of the weaker people. There's not that level of self-awareness doesn't exist as much. But I think there's a lot of there's this horrible, I don't know, miserable Protestant work ethic vibe of you can't take a pill to fix your brain, or you can't take Ozempic to get, you have to fucking suffer in order to improve yourself. You can't, pills, unless they're fucking crackpot pills sold by a crackpot, then maybe.
Right. And now we're back to the supplements. So many of which are that.
Which are occasionally real, but
yes, occasionally, but yeah, so many of that is that nonsense. And
there was a time when it seemed a lot more like hyperbole to think that Republicans are on the side of disease, and also they hate trees and clean air, and that's starting to seem more just accurate in a way that's it just looks like more deliberate malice, as not just in theory but clearly as in rhetoric and outward presentation as well. So it's hard to just, I mean, they do know they need the air to be breathable, right? I mean, and at some point a disease might actually get them, even in their wealth and their bunkers or what have you.
think
can't figure out what their deal is as much as I thought I used to understand.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, and that's also part of broader these seemingly like a wildly counterproductive things that even from a model of like entirely self-interest, it's hard to completely explain, like the tariffs, like so yeah. I mean, you need some sort of weird ideological factors like beyond self-interest to, I think, to explain it or whatever's going.
Or like beyond monetary self-interest. I saw some people on Bluesky expressing like, I thought that rich people were more sort of devoted to their money above all else, but a lot of them are still simping for Trump over some of their financial gain. But I guess they also think that they can plead their case to the king and get an exception to a tariff. And Trump fucking loves that. That's his favorite thing, is to have people being like, "Oh, I was wrong about you. I'll do whatever you say." Like,
yeah, and he just makes it up when there hasn't been that. Like this, all the other countries, calling up, begging to negotiate, and that's why he dropped the tariffs down to 10% on everyone but China and Canada and Mexico. And it's like that didn't happen. Just didn't happen.
Was isolationism supposed to involve this much hostility to our allies? Because I thought the vibe at best was supposed to be, we're maybe a little too nice to the nastiest, authoritarian regimes, and we don't invade them, and we don't sort of try to change their policies with carrots and sticks, but also we're still like nice to Canada. I mean, I don't think anyone expected this level of hostility towards. Oh man.
It makes no sense, except for I think the only way to make sense of it is like he clearly didn't want to say the stuff on the campaign trail because he knows that nobody supports it. But he also just wants like literally, I think, to annex territory to have some sort of legacy associated with that.
He's a 19th century person. It's so weird. With like the type of imperialism, the type of attitude, obviously the weird fixation, it's the only word for it, on tariffs.
Yeah.
It's so weird.
It is all bizarrely 19th century, even going back to the health policy then and the weird machinations underlying that. It's just bizarrely 19th century in all the worst ways.
Mm-hmm. No, we don't even have like various 19th century anarchists to soothe us at this point,
Yeah, they're still dead.
They're still dead.
The ideas they were arguing against are coming back big time. But
I mean, there's also the element of even, and I do this sometimes if I accidentally say that like the invasion of the Philippines of America was like the dawn of American imperialism. And then I am like, well, why am I forgetting the entirety of like the Indian Wars? And as if it doesn't count as like war and aggression if it's in the same land mass.
Yeah.
And we're still doing that because everything done domestically that's completely jackbooted, thug, militarized behavior, like that's not military aggression. That's just the thing we're doing at home. So it's different. And that doesn't make any fucking sense.
Oh, I agree. That kind of arbitrary line, I feel like, does a lot of work in a lot of people's like weird mental modeling of what to be concerned about. But it's so functionally the same. People with guns and the power of coercion, and obviously there's been so much great work, especially lately by people like my friend Nathan Goodman, who you know as well, and I bet all our listeners know on the kind of boomerang connection there with like you power one, you're empowering the other. There's no. And this is clearly illustrating that the last few months.
Trying to divide it is completely, I mean, it's like a statist idea, but it's also self-sabotaging because as Americans, if we're trying to do this, we're saying, well, do whatever you want to people in this border. In fact, militarize the border of this particular land mass, and it doesn't count in the same way that doing stuff But then, of course, who knows? Maybe we'll take Canada and Greenland. If fucking like Lithuania was threatening to invade Canada or something, like that might be sort of a little joke. But America doing anything like that is never going to be a joke unless we really kill America.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are treating it as a joke. It's hard to entertain the realistic possibility of it. But also, I mean, that's just how everyone's rationalized so many things he said for a decade now. Well, he's not serious. I don't know how he figured out the genius marketing tool of like, say whatever you want, and then everyone will like filter it through like whatever they don't like, he's joking. Whatever I do like, he's serious. Like,
right, exactly.
That's the only thing that explains the bizarre appraising of it.
I mean, maybe it's also the stupid Steve Bannon thing about throwing too much shit for anyone to keep track of, and
that too.
That always worked on me in like breaking my brain, and I think it really does work. And I do think Trump has already done more horrible shit that he promised than he ever did the first time. I was very concerned. I was more depressed by this election than any other in my life. But I still thought, say the tormenting trans people thing was going to be a mechanism to like get into power. I did not expect this level of focused attention on continuing tormenting people like this. It's very unsettling.
Yeah, it's startling how worse he's already been since the first term. And seeing that, like nothing really felt like an empty campaign thing, like more follow through.
Mm-hmm. And like the haunting pettiness. Like I was idly thinking of countries to flee to, and I was fixated on Uruguay for a while. Because countries that no one really wants to go to in sort of a indifferent way are like you're not getting to Norway, like you're not getting to the high demand places. But I was looking at the State Department thing on Uruguay, and it said at one point like different travel warnings, and it said LGB travelers. And just to double check, I looked at the Wayback Machine, and it used to say LGBTI because apparently intersex people also don't exist anymore. And the idea that they went through that on every fucking State Department page is so troubling because it's like petty and massive at the same time. Like,
yeah, I think it's easy to underrate like how like what seems petty. Well, okay, what like material change that have on say a trans person's life, but like that stuff matters and is reflective and like feeds into and emboldens a whole attitude and way of going about what they're doing. So I agree, that stuff's very concerning, and it's so easy to get away with because it's so easy to sort of rhetorically write off and like
though when you start removing the letter T from like the page about like the Stonewall riot, like the state I don't know what sort of official government thing, like there's a memorial or something, I don't even know, removing the T as if like those people, like it's Stonewall, like but they're also removing pages about Navajo code talkers in World War II. And the excuse occasionally is like, oh, it was just an automated thing. We're just that incompetent and chaotic, doing Control F on various terms and just cutting them off of web pages.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that, I mean, what we as a society venerate and remember and sort of memorialize and inscribe and write down, matters. And language, it reflects things, but it shapes too how we approach things. And you start to get rid of the T in that it's obvious what you're doing, and it's obvious what that broad shift would do and the effect it would have on trans people beyond the language change.
And I think that there was a small movement, like I usually associate Britain with the most active TERF type stuff, and I know they had like an LGB organization, and it's clearly like you think they're not going to come and oppress you if you shove other people in front of the bulldozer first. I would attribute at least a lot of recent immigrants' sort of harshness on other immigrants in polls to that kind of attitude. And it's both kind of contemptible and kind of understandable, because you're basically making this artificial thing you have to fight over, like my space. I got to stay here, so I'm going to push you out. Like it is. They have made this fight occur for no reason at all. So I get that, but it's also, you can't do that because you've ruined yourself and you've ruined any kind of movement without.
Yeah, it's very tempting, I think, and you see it over and over again, like you said, these examples for folks that are part of a marginalized class or oppressed group of people, oppressed identity. Once they start to climb that ladder of social acceptance and inclusion, which they rightly deserve, importantly so, but once they climb that ladder, it's so easy to then maybe kick out the people from beneath you if that's what keeping your place entails, and not to excuse people, but also to understand in a broad way. I think why these dynamics come up in a lot of different areas. You have a similar area with the way anti-Semitism is being weaponized in this country, in the United States, to deport legal residents of the country for supposedly being anti-Semitic, and it seems like that's only going to get worse with them like scanning social media accounts for that and everything. And obviously it's complete like bad faith weaponization of anti-Semitism, and ironically in a moment where everyone is erroneously taking this election to mean like some like mandate on a certain perspective, or some big backlash against identity politics or wokeness, or however you want to frame those things. And it's ironic that here the identity politics of anti-Semitism are explicitly driving and justifying so much horrible shit right now, and it's really depressing.
And meanwhile, you have incredible, not even dog whistles, but you have Musk making interesting hand gestures, and
the dog whistle of a Nazi salute.
Yes, exactly. I almost subscribed to someone who suggested, possibly it was for some more news, the comedic news thing, suggested that Musk meant to be more subtle about that, but it's so fucking awkward that he did make it a little more blatant. But that, and the fucking people he interacts with on Twitter, and the just full-on great replacement shit. Trump obviously has done weird, like, Jews aren't loyal to certain countries, but also Jews that don't like me aren't really Jewish. Jews that don't support Israel aren't like all that shit, and that isn't anti-Semitic apparently somehow.
No, the double standard is bizarre. So much of what really is just anti-Israeli government's policy on Palestine gets distorted and morphed into being anti-Semitic. And anti-Zionism does often conceal anti-Semitism. It's very convenient and useful, and there's no shortage of that. Mm-hmm. But it's become so weaponized and muddied and legitimate. Not just legitimate, but like basic moral objections that anyone should agree with against the Israeli government's policy and actions against Palestine. Those things are being interpreted as anti-Semitic, and that's heinous. Yeah.
And again, the many Jewish people who get involved in like the college encampment stuff and all the protests, like Never Again, like these various groups that I feel so fundamentally proud of whenever I see them out there. But like,
yeah,
are they not Jewish? Are you like?
No, right?
Do they not count? Did their status get revoked? You want to play that game? Really?
It really shows that a lot of ultimately there's so few Jewish people in the world and in the United States. People's reports and estimates constantly, people overestimate, non-Jews overestimate the amount of Jews constantly, similar with other minority groups of all kind.
Yeah.
And like and so I think a lot of the discourse that gets shaped in the United States about anti-Semitism is so shaped by these evangelical Christian voices that really all they're really caring about is anti-Israel, because of the way Israel shapes into those people's eschatology and mythology about the world, and its demise. So it gets distorted into that, the discussion of anti-Semitism, and then you have like wildly like anti-Semitic things just peppered into conversation by Trump, like you said, those examples of like deciding someone is Jewish or who doesn't really count as Jewish. It's like so wildly anti-Semitic, and we know from history how horrible that can be. But I think also it's sort of a very casual kind of anti-Semitism it has nothing to do with Israel, or it's not anti-Israel, and so it just goes by the wayside.
Yeah. I also still, I think I have to try to write a thing about this. There's like for all of the years the like Godwin's law was a thing, and like referencing Hitler in arguments and calling people Nazis is a thing. It became this giant cliche, and like I don't think people know much about the Nazis at all most of the time. Like I don't think most people know about the T4 precursor to what we usually talk about with the Holocaust, which is killing the disabled. Not to immediately, like, there's no one-to-one happening right now or anything like that, but they don't know about stuff. They don't know about the way Nazism was, introduced into the conversation and the way things are framed. And they just think that unless you're some guy, not even like Hitler usually, but like unless you're like the most physically violent neo-Nazi possible, who is like, I want to kill these groups because I hate them and am racist, then nothing else still counts. And I don't know. I mean, people at this point, I almost feel like fascist is, maybe Nazi was overused, because that is a specific type of government from a specific time, but fascist is just fucking everywhere, and somehow we were understating that all this time, even after, I don't know.
Yeah, I think a lot of the denials of what is just obvious and staring us all in the face, and the denials of that stuff feel very much just like people playing out, it can't happen here. And different ways of saying that phrase is that's anything is saying. The denials that there were Nazi salutes at the Republican event, denials of how, I mean, you talk to the average Trump supporter, I feel like that I've spoken to, and it's all about how there are millions of people in the United States, and they are an existential threat to our country and to our people. And the government basically has no choice but to round them up without due process and ship them off to a prison slave labor camp in another country. And that is not proto-Holocaust stuff. That's just Holocaust stuff. And they're saying that's the ideas, and they don't see it. It's not the Holocaust until 6 million people have been murdered. Right. And it's just like, well, that's part of how they got into the Holocaust in the first place, right? I mean, like, the first plan was okay, the Jews have to leave. Okay, if they don't, we're going to move them, mass deportation. Okay, we're going to just send them to prison, and then that becomes mass killing and mass murder. So I agree with you. There's great ignorance about how it actually happened, and about how the groundwork is being laid again. It's haunting.
I also think that people still don't understand the sort of fascist framework that with gender roles and the sort of nostalgia for the past. I mean, nostalgia is like a terminal human problem, I think, and you have to have, like, to me, I think I've inoculated myself against knee-jerk nostalgia from reading history. And I would cut off my hand for a time machine just to be able to see the past. but I don't think it was better because it's not now in the way that, but just this.
For sure. I really pine for the days when there was no nostalgia. I mean, I think back to those days and they're fantastic. If only we could go back to that. But
the first year of human, maybe. No, I yearn for the trees. I yearn for, I don't know, having a tail. I'm not, they don't understand. I'm always like sub-tweet speaking to certain people when they don't understand the type of framework that first, like Tucker Carlson using Stormfront ask bullshit, and then trickling down to people like Joe Rogan, who used to be kind of sane and now is just one of like the Great Replacement becoming totally normalized as a right-wing talking point is so chartable I saw it happen like in real time when that was something that only the worst people said, and now it's just, of course that's what's happening,
Yeah, it used to feel beyond the pale, and I don't know when that changed, but I completely agree that it feels like totally not where we were with that 10 years ago, and that's just like a normal, perfectly legitimate viewpoint. And again, it goes to what you said, people just don't. No, everyone else can see it. They can see how, like you said, the gender roles and nostalgia, the deportations, the lawlessness of the executive, all this stuff coming together. It's just obvious what it is.
I mean, when I see yet another thing about how like trad wife influencers are somehow apolitical in some way, things like that. Like, how fucking naive are you? Like, don't you understand anything?
Yeah.
It's like, and then Chris Rufo, guy who cares about education, Abigail Schreier is just worried about those poor, confused girls who, the trans boys who they're just confused little girls. And she's just worried as a parent and a mother. Like, there's this insane naivete that I see a lot of reactions to this terrible framing of things where it's like,
I agree. It's naivety. I think we built up a lot of presumption of good faith. I think often for good reason and often in our own self-interest. Discourse is kind of pointless if you don't, if not everyone is involved in good faith. So, and it's hard to admit and hard to realize how weaponized that can be, and how much if you can't really bring yourself to see people that are acting in bad faith, I mean, you haven't really built up, it's like you lack the antibodies or the immune system to like people who will weaponize that. And like you say, I mean, you can't even see it. It's just it's not even in your purview.
I mean, they really think that unless you say, I hate this group of people, then it doesn't count. You can go full on like, what's that fuckface? Michael Knowles, like, we must eradicate transgenderism or something. Like, you can get that rhetorically genocidal, but if you don't say, I hate these people and want to kill them, then it's nothing worth discussing. So.
And obviously people only say that to other people who they know already agree with them on that. And they're never going to say it to people, who are, so I agree. And I don't know how to combat that, because it's hard. You can't go around assuming bad faith of everyone either. That's exhausting and defective in its own right.
I think a lot of people do delude themselves. I think, like the aforementioned Chris Rufo, who used to fucking tweet about, this certain word is doing really well and making people, like mad. Like, he would pull the curtain back, and he was still treated as like Mr. Education Policy man, very serious. And I think Stevens, Miller, and Bannon are kind of self-aware in their monstrousness. I think a lot of people are like, I do think the Trump administration there's fewer self-deluding. I always have suspected that people like, I don't know, like Obama or something, are very good at lying to themselves because it's a solemn duty to have to fucking drone murder people, like these are West Wing-esque, like, oh, let me sit in the Oval Office and like have a big think about like my serious responsibility. And that's how I used to think of most powerful people. And Trump, part of the Trump experience is just none of the trimmings are there anymore. The corruption is so blatant. The mafioso fake lawsuits where they pay him money to make those fake lawsuits go away. It's a shakedown of Facebook, various law firms and stuff. Like none of the bullshit is there anymore, and the naked thing is. And for some reason, some people think that's better. And I think at the very beginning, I thought maybe that nakedness would teach people that politics is nasty and coercive. But all it's done is make people lose even like a shred of, well, I can't sound like too much of a terrible person when I talk about this. I have to couch it in some other language. There's maybe some thing to hold me back even a little bit. And I feel like that's almost gone now. And there's no good is going to come of that.
I agree. I think that it's made politics more exciting to these people and entertaining and a more fun way to express themselves. And I think we really missed the time where you had to at least create some sort of self-constraint or some level of civility and concern for things like that. They've seemingly gone out the window with such speed. It happens fast.
I mean, I used to scorn, and I still do in a limited way, this civility thing, because it wasn't about, to me, civility for its own sake. It's that a shocking number of people take their psychological cues from the president, and they see him behaving in this absurd manner, and they become worse and more shameless, and nothing good comes out of that. It's not just like I'm more offended because that time, I'm trying to think of people like Dick Cheney saying fuck in Congress once or something, and like back in the olden days of the early 2000s, people would swoon over that, and it was always absurd. It's not civility, it's what it's kind of tied to and what it was actually holding up more of something.
I agree. I think there were ways of going wrong with the whole civility issue, but then yes, we see now where we are now, and it's frightening. And it seems like we've lost a number of things that really did feel like limits on powerful people, and now they don't even need to make, the slightest attempt to be anything but brazenly corrupt and malicious and cruel, and that's made their substantive actions more malicious and corrupt and cruel, and it didn't make them less so. I don't know. People, I think, people thought, oh, maybe it'll make more people see how bad the system is and they'll be against it, and like they won't be able to get away with it. It's like the exact opposite's happened. People just don't give a shit anymore, and it's exciting and a proxy for what they would be watching that's entertaining themselves on television. Now it's just the television of politics. It's all very entertaining, I think, to people. And I would totally go back to that. I think that is the biggest qualitative difference with Trump as discontinuous from the prior presidents, and like that feeling of unleashed power and cruelty is people actually like it.
Yeah, I mean, because I guess the most generous possible way of talking about this is that people got like the honesty of it. Not that Trump gives a shit about, I mean, the idea that he gives a shit about like the working man and all, like, but laughable, but the honesty of him being a terrible person, picking terrible people, and just, it's all right there. And you're not saying, well, I killed all these people with the robot, but I am a very serious person, and I'm not treated like fucking Ted Bundy, even though I've personally led to the deaths of more people. I mean, that framing is grotesque, but this this was not the solution at all, it turns out.
Yeah.
And sorry to be so fucking big government, but I would prefer bureaucratic, charitable shit. Like I would prefer, like, there's some version of giving HIV medicine out that would be better than whatever the government was doing last year about it. I totally. But you're getting rid of that as you empower the worst people on earth, and you're sending more people to Guantanamo Bay, and you are not deporting, but doing it basically George W. Bush style extraordinary rendition in El Salvador. Like, that shit's insane.
Yeah,
And
all the libertarian anarchist, it's delusion is what it is, to trick themselves into thinking that we've seen anything in the direction of libertarian and anarchist values or principles. Like you said, we're not. They're eliminating the absolute best, most efficient, most workable, and most virtuous as can be elements of what the government does, like this aid to the developing countries and helping with disease and things like that. I mean, the numbers on that are horrifying, of people that are dependent on that, and it's that's what you cut. It doesn't make any sense unless it's this deliberate malice. And then, like you said, you're just taking all that, and then now we're gonna have a bigger military budget and more money to send people to foreign prisons, and
money is no object with deportation, but also I'm a real fiscal conservative. I mean, it's complete nonsense. It's
no, it doesn't even make sense on its own terms. It's a shame to see, like, libertarian ideas weaponized in such a way, and for people who go around thinking themselves are libertarians, like, falling for it in such an easy way. Like, oh yeah, you like there's a Department for Government Efficiency. Wow, well that means it's like what it does is libertarian. It's like, what do you? No,
like, at best it's staggeringly naive. Like, that is the best, and it's, I think it's probably much worse than that.
I think part of it is just like that, and just like a diluted optimism of like, well, it sucks to have unpopular ideas for so long, and like the idea that like now we're winning, and like look at this happening, and then you look at what they're cutting and the way they're doing it, and then the way they're not actually cutting any spending, but they're just taking some money and putting it to even worse things. It's like, what? How is any of this at all libertarian? It's not.
I mean, I am glad about Ross Ulbricht being pardoned. I think there's some normie Democrats who are not in favor of that. I bet if Ross is still a libertarian, he's probably not necessarily in favor of his freedom in exchange for like everything else being like hideous. I still get emails from the Libertarian Mises Caucus, which I never signed up for, and I read them with fascination, then delete them with hostility. And I guess they ousted incredible moron Angela McArdle from the LP, who is, I guess, vaguely responsible for getting Ross pardoned, so that's nice, but she is an atrocious human being and has shamed that entire party and stuff. And
yeah, hard to keep up with all that. I've seen the stuff she's posted on Twitter. It's like horrendous, just like the most blatant bootlicking and like deliberate, clearly entryism. I don't think that person has any interest in libertarianism, but entryism to take libertarian resources and otherwise libertarian individuals and devote it all to helping Republicans and Trump and authoritarian ideas. And I understand. I cringe and wince and just everything at what feels like the weaponization of Ross and that issue, as like someone who's been following that for a decade, ever since, and
he was a Students for Liberty guy, so were you, right?
Yeah, I mean, I never met Ross or anything, but lots of discussions of Ross at SFL events. Ross was nominated for Alum of the Year once.
And lost to Robbie Sobey.
We don't talk about that. I've met Ross's mother at an SFL events, and she's delightful. We've interviewed Ross's mother for C4SS in the past, and And it's been something we've been, interested and concerned about for many years. And it's so delightful and fantastic to see him released. It's amazing. It feels unbelievable because I didn't really think it would happen. So it's amazing and fantastic. The way people have who it's an insult to Ross and the issue to take that and then downplay, someone, all these other things. It's like literally like so fucking insulting. And like shows to me that you do not give a shit about Ross or his freedom or that topic, and that you're just using it to excuse and downplay and win a rhetorical argument and get people to care less about authoritarianism. It doesn't excuse anything. It's completely ridiculous and weaponized by libertarians in quotes.
Scare quotes implied. I have seen, I saw once some January 6 people were obviously pardoned. I saw more sort of backlash against the pardon power of presidents, like one of the one good things they can do. And was a good encapsulation of like the worst type of Democrat attitude of just like, of all the powers of the presidency to restrict you for a second to think that pardon is one. It's insane.
I agree, although it's admittedly difficult and confusing terrain when the pardon power becomes so fucking politicized, and abused in a clearly self-serving manner. I mean, at this point, he's basically pardoning, fascist paramilitary members, people, the January 6 people, and will benefit when something like that happens again in a few years from those people being again available. So obviously, yes, love the pardon power, love that Ross is free. It sucks that it's being given a bad name with the corrupt use of it.
I do feel like every day there's less and less chance that Edward Snowden will ever be able to come back home because of all the Russia shenanigans, and that's a shame.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh my gosh, there was something else. There was something else. Ross. Went out of my brain.
Well, I haven't kept up with the Libertarian Party. I never thought it was for much good. I don't think they've been doing much good. I don't think they will do much good.
The reaction to Chase Oliver was the last straw for me in terms of just wanting to throw them in the trash, because you had a nice 30-something gay guy who literally left the Democratic Party because of their warmongering. And so many people decided that because he wore a mask in 2020 autumn, didn't think drag queens were an existential threat to humanity, shit like that he was no good. Like, blatantly homophobic, and just any excuse to not want him. And these are people who fought tooth and nail for Rickenbach? What the fuck was his name? Who, the last I checked, was tweeting something about removing Jews because they didn't.
Rechtenwald?
Yeah, whatever.
You're confusing. You almost said Rickenbach.
Yeah, no, my bad. No, it's not that level of. But they were fucking fighting for that dude, who the last I saw from him was talking about moving Jews because they didn't gel with Western civilization. There is no fixing that. If that dude was second place, was fighting for the nomination, there's nothing there.
Very small scale instance of what we've talking about with this stuff coming more to the forefront, becoming more explicit and hard to deny. And it's a shame because right now should be, as our friend Charles G. Koch over on Twitter said, this should this should be the person who identifies as Charles G. Koch. This should be a libertarian moment. And it's not. There's nothing libertarian. They have nothing to say. It's so embarrassing that we're experiencing this kind of braggadocious and orgiastic display of state violence and imperialism and threats of conquering and invading and ethnic cleansing here and abroad. Obviously, we go down the list. We talked about it a lot on this episode, but it should be a real libertarian moment, and it's not. It's not.
I'm just thinking again of when you were straight up comparing Holocaust and illegal immigration, immigrant deportation in America, and how much of that goes back to just the state endorsement of your existence being sort of the only thing that matters. Like there's this whole idea of illegal immigrant, which I use because to me that's not a fucking insult in any way. Like that doesn't, like, they're not allowed to be here. So subsequently, almost anything you could do is fine because they're not permitted to be here. But Nazi Germany, you have all these categories of people who were not citizens in the same way. It was more gradual removal of it, but they didn't count. And I mean, it kind of comes back to, like, does the state endorse your existence? Then you're okay. And of course, don't count on that, because I found the Haitian immigrant Ohio thing to be, like, really terrifying, because to me at the time that felt like there was a real Rubicon crossing, and like,
yeah,
that should have told people something was. And again, it was sometimes couched as like this like wacky joke, like eating dogs and cats. That's a weird thing to say. That was such a bad sign. And it also was the very first most blatant, oh, you're legal? Not to us, you're not.
It's painful to see the people treating it like a joke. I mean, you can just see what they would have done in 1930s Germany, and like I can just see it when they're reacting to that with, haha, funny. Like, you can just see it, how they would have treated these other things, because that's what's happening.
I mean, I didn't believe those people who were like, oh, I only have a problem with illegal immigrants, but they used, for a while, they kind of pretended that was the thing, and it's so
it's pretty impossible.
Mask is really off on
to
that
pretend
one,
that. And it goes back to what we were saying earlier. I think it's an interesting point. What with, does the state endorse your existence? Because that goes back to, we're just gonna quietly get rid of the T and erase the T on LGBT. Because that's exactly what that is. That's a great way of articulating that issue earlier of another instance of formally not endorsing your existence. And then what kind of policies do you think will follow from that?
And like, if we're talking about, I can imagine someone sort of underappreciating the seriousness of removing government web pages, basically. But to me, it's that those pages existed and then you take them down. Or it's not that trans people are blessedly invisible to the state. It's like, oh, we saw you there, and now we don't want you anymore. We're going to take all the evidence of your existence down. It's that it was there and then it was taken down, which is such a problem.
Yes, and people underrate that, I think, and it's kind of easy to see the appeal of that on first, I think, but really thinking through what that means, what that reflects, what that tends to precede. And again, going back to just more broadly, not appreciating formal, rhetorical, ceremonial practices and norms that actually constrain the people in power. And it's from the way they talk, to the way they write the government websites, to everything that trickles down to their policies and whose existence they endorse, sometimes at the point of a gun.
There's just, like, I thought we were going to be at a level of affirmative action is just as evil as Jim Crow level of right wing, sort of. That's our new standard. We're backlashing against. No, but we have gone to Navajo code talker information is like, occasionally they're like, oops, we'll put the webpage about Harry Tubman back or whatever. Like, they're obviously doing some large language model control F, like, frantic thing, which also doesn't inspire any confidence. But there is no longer any plausible deniability for some of that stuff, in terms of it not being like equality, racial blindness. Like, you can't argue that anymore. It's not even possible. I mean, if fighting against racism is acknowledging race and is therefore DEI, it's basically what that is. Like,
it's very apparent that it is still just so blatantly hypocritical. Like, again, before, I mean, so much of the regime's policies on deporting people is apparently based on anti-racism, because it's anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
And there's some weird disconnect. It's all marketing, and nobody can see the terrain. They can all see the map, and it's like, oh, well, that's not identity politics or wokeness or anti-racism, or I'm against all that, but anti-Semitism, that should guide who we deport for sure. And it makes no sense on its own terms. Things increasingly makes less sense to me, even on their own terms, on what the people in power are doing, on what their supporters continue to say, to rationalize things. This was so evident with the tariffs yesterday. Jesus, I've never seen a more glaring and depressing instance of that than we're just going to say, like, we're not held to any standards of rationality or reason or consistency at all. That's how people act. What do you do?
Yeah, and the constant, like, changing of policy, mind changing. Like, if I wanted to be more, like, I don't want to act like I'm desperately devoted to America as a nation state and all that implies, but at the same time, it's like they hate America and want to destroy it more than I ever have in terms of what they're doing. And alienating the rest of the globe in an insane fashion, and just
it's something deeply and fundamentally un-American in the good sense, insofar as there is one. I mean, governments can be better or worse. Right. American government has had tons of really useful limits on government power, and people in power have never, at least in recent memory, given less of a shit about those things. It's so deeply un-American in that sense.
Yeah, and like when we used to be knee-jerk anti-communist, we might protect Cuban immigrants or Venezuelan ones. These like tepid, vaguely offensive principles occasionally contained like a limiting factor or a slight protecting of certain groups. And when you're shameless and you don't even pretend to have a principle, then there's nothing left for anybody there. Like, fuck Ronald Reagan. But the rhetorical difference between tear down this wall and this terrified, hostile, build the wall, deport everyone stuff, like the narrative of that is so much worse. Even if all hypocrisy, all the other stuff in the previous versions implied, the purity of the terribleness it's still shocking. I've never caught up to that still.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there is any catching up to it. A lot of trying to understand history is trying to get caught up way after the fact, and it's still very and not get caught up on what happened, but like you said, kind of get like emotionally caught up to like where you can like accept that this is the world and like other people are like this. Like, I don't know if that ever happens.
Yeah, I used to be more optimistic, and I hate how many people I wish would die. I mean, just stick with like the most powerful people on earth right now across this globe, and just I don't like wishing people would just fucking keel over. That I once got a Reddit warning because I wrote in the anarchism subreddit that I hoped someone should take one for the team and visit Putin. That's all I said. I got a warning from it. I'm still mad about that. It's just
the real regime of censorship, the Reddit anarchists.
Some fucking tanky snuck in here.
The dreaded Reddit anarchists.
I do think that xenophobia is still I don't want to say natural, but like the most common, probably, prejudice in certain ways. You can ramp it up easily. It's the best cudgel, but I think there's still this element of tribalism that people, again, I don't want to say naturally have, but there's like something you have to fight a little harder against. And you have to understand that nation states are crap, and that's a hard one to figure out.
Yeah. I agree. And I'm curious, what's your favorite bird? Did we? I feel like we got on a tangent for, and we didn't circle back to that.
I'm telling you, grackles are really underrated.
That's your final answer.
Bird racism. People are like, I only want the tiniest little delicate songbirds. I want fucking 10 grackles to just eat all the bird seed.
You yelling bird racism. I didn't expect that on today's episode. On our season 2 premiere of all things.
Bird racism. That's the episode title.
That's fair. I mean, people do talk about like dog racism, right? Like people prefer, it's like unfair.
Do they talk about dog racism? Is that a thing?
I don't know. What you just said reminded me of like how people like prefer cute dogs to ugly dogs or something.
Well, I mean, of course, some cute dogs are ugly, I think, because they've been tragically overbred, and that's not the dog's fault.
It's just like it leads to like differential adoption rates or something. Like, so it's like how like, and so if these birds are also victims of that,
it's odd.
I don't really want a songbird or a grackle. I'm still suspect grackle might not exist, but going with that exists, I don't want a grackle. I'll stick with pterodactyl for sure.
Put out pterodactyl feeder. Actually, I still think it's really weird that
it's just like a human.
Yeah. Oh yeah, actually, it's a guy just holding.
Right or no? The pterodactyls do they eat people?
I don't.
I mean, I guess they wouldn't have eaten people.
Chance.
I don't think they were really around us temporally speaking.
I mean, ask like Ken Ham at the Creationism Museum or something, and he might.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'm not sure we know what they would have eaten, but they might want to eat people.
For sure, right? I mean, we know fucking the tall one, they just ate grass.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's, yeah.
The Brontosaurus?
Yeah.
Right?
You know, I think because he wrote that book about global warming that I never read, people remember Michael Crichton as like really far right. And he was like one of the only people who could write shit where he's like, I'm nervous about science and corporations without it being like hippie, Luddite, like nonsense. And I'm sorry he died so long ago, because
back to the hippies. I've never read Michael Crichton. I've seen.
Oh, he's a lot of fun. A lot of his books were pretty fun.
I've seen. What's the most famous? Schindler's List? Is that the most famous adaptation of Michael Crichton? No, I've seen Jurassic Park.
That's what I'm aware.
And I remember the dinos. Those were a big part of it, right?
A big part of Jurassic Park. Yes, I believe so. I believe
that really fits the name. Then that's a good name for a movie about. Man, you realize I'm just catching up. 30 years later, like this movie's title makes perfect sense.
That was a fine piece of cinema.
Yeah, seen any good cinema? You seen a cinema? I've seen one or two cinemas.
Good question. I mostly have been watching Star Trek Deep Space Nine with my husband, and we're almost done with it. And I vaguely watched it as a tiny child. I didn't remember anything, and it's very good. It might be the best Star Trek that I've seen, which is most of them at this point.
It's a high bar.
Yeah, like I really enjoyed the war setting. These sort of it's like it begins in a post occupation setting where the Cardassians have just left the Bajorans and they've been occupying for 60 years.
The Kardashians.
I keep trying not to think Kardashian every time. It's just it's a good setting. Have
you seen any media that's come out in the last 30, 25 years? So far, we talked about Jurassic Park and Deep Space Nine. But I'm chill with 90s media. Did you have an answer?
I finally watched Twisters, which is a not sequel, but sort of a nod to 90s media, and actually script by Michael Crichton, which explains why I was thinking about Michael Crichton. Twisters was, however, very disappointing, unfortunately.
Were there not enough Twisters?
Kind of. I don't think the effects were that much better. And, well, Twister has like Philip Seymour Hoffman, who was an amazing actor playing like an annoying guy.
Hard to beat that.
It just like it made me feel a bit old because I was like, these bland, pretty actors are not doing it for me. I'm not feeling. I don't know. Twister is terrible. It's very inaccurate. People like to drive directly into tornadoes, which storm chasers don't really try to do usually. But you know,
I feel like I haven't really seen any disaster movies that really. I guess I saw, what was that called? The Day After Tomorrow.
Oh yeah, that's
when I was a kid. That scared me though, because I was like, "Fuck, I don't know what I would do." I mean, I was like 6, but maybe not 6. But
problem with that is that Dennis Quaid is a really chilly actor. I mean,
chilly?
Not just because it's cold.
Are you saying he's chill, like as in relaxed, or just like you felt?
I'm saying his brother, who is also insane, Randy Quaid, is superior in the superior Roland Emmerich film Independence Day, which was
Randy Quaid is delightful in Independence Day.
And Independence Day was the peak of Roland Emmerich's career for some reason, and he's never been able to hit that again for some reason.
So that's a high bar.
That is the greatest.
Where do you go from blowing up the White House? Where do you go?
That is not a bad movie. It is a dumb movie. And I think there is a difference.
Some of the greatest movies are dumb as shit.
What are other good dumb movies? I mean, Twister's a little dumb, I would say.
Well, I can't speak to its greatness on that.
We should just have a movie podcast and ignore the fucking random fires breaking out. And
that's true. Let's just throw away the last hour of discussion.
Yeah, throw it right in the trash.
Season 2 will be movies.
I saw a good dumb movie that was not a 90s movie. It was actually a very recent Korean movie. I think it was called Ashfall. But the vibes were very 90s disaster movie, except also there was a couple of minor American soldier characters. And it was delightfully insulting to America because they're such like stupid cowboys. Like, but like the overall vibe is like a 90s American disaster movie. It was kind of awesome. I enjoyed it.
I gotta watch that. I love the 90s, so I'll watch things that have 90s vibes for sure. But I have 90s vibes.
I don't feel like I have 80s vibes, even if I was born in the 80s.
You have more 90s vibes.
But I prefer the 80s secretly in some ways.
Really?
Well, they had like the best one-hit wonder kind of pop stuff. I think the fashion was wildly superior.
Do you support like the Challenger explosion? Like, is that what you're saying?
I do support the Challenger explosion.
Do you quick edit that out? To our
that was totally. Lest we become too protective of shit like NASA and other government things, fucking Challenger was utterly preventable, and that is all NASA's fault. And I feel bad for that guy who was like, hey, this will happen if you launch during cold. And they were like, sure. And then it did. So fuck NASA in that case.
Yeah, for sure.
So I do support the Challenger explosion.
For sure.
And the Columbia. I love fucking... I've been reading a lot of Wikipedia, and one of the things was about the Challenger explosion. The only good internet left, besides this conversation right now, is Wikipedia.
Well, I'm just glad we're being, upfront about our ill intent and malice and our bad faith, and our supporting the deaths of innocents.
Love it. My favorite activity is just massive doom, explosions, etc.
Doom is, that's what's going on. It's a little bit of Doom. Not the movie. I haven't seen that.
Or the video game franchise, which I've never played. But
oh yeah, not that either. Just regular Doom.
Yeah, it's true.
Well,
do
you think our listeners will want a second episode of season 2?
Well, I don't think they have a choice in the matter, honestly.
Yeah. Let's not leave it up to them.
I mean, it's really not about the audience. Fortunately, my cat never made an appearance.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I've been waiting to meet your cat, even virtually.
Well,
and your cat is just.
she's not even yelling at the door or anything. She's
I don't
probably
think your
just taking
cat
a
likes
nap.
me. I get real anti-Semitic vibes from your cat. To be honest, sorry to say, but if we're gonna call it out, then we should call it out.
We were talking about pet racism, and I have yet to find out whether people actually are less inclined to adopt black cats because of superstition.
Oh yeah, I've heard of
People
that.
claim that that's a thing. I'm not sure. My cat is very janky. She has numerous health problems. She wheezes loudly all the time. She's a sad kitty. She's a good kitty.
Yeah, one of my cats has asthma.
Oh, really?
Some wheezing, some coughing.
I found a cute YouTube cat channel yesterday, and one of the cats was getting like a cat inhaler.
Oh, we've never had to use that. It's not that bad, but
I was saying maybe someday. I don't know. Hopefully not. I was like, I didn't know that cat inhalers existed.
I know. I found that out when I looked into that. That's pretty wild. Technology is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, there's always, every time I eat Impossible chicken nuggets, I feel renewed faith in science and technology because those are delicious.
Yeah, I've had those. I just wish they were dino shaped.
Dude, there are dino shaped ones, or they were animal shaped. I missed that whole
and they're
second grade
impossible
experience. Yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen those.
They're
I gotta get on that. Can you mail me some?
You can probably find them. I don't know.
Email.
But it's just because they don't have the haunting aspect of real chicken nuggets, even if you wanted to eat them, which, when I did, I still was like, this is a little unsettling. They have the satisfaction without the troubling subtext.
That's what you want
mm-hmm.
out of everything.
Mm-hmm. It's true. So there's still hope because of the Impossible nuggets. That's all I have to cling to in these times.
I think we should close on that note of hope. I think we should leave our audience with that glimmer.
How did we used to even close this show? Do we know? How long?
I would just close my computer and walk away.
No, don't close it. Just walk, just walking into the distance.
Just walk away
silently. That would be very powerful if you did that.
Real powerful vibes.
Of course, you just walk into your house wall, and I would trip over the crap I need to clean up over there. So, well, this was a journey.
Thanks for joining us on this journey.
If
listeners,
you are here, yeah.
Lucy's cat,
yeah.
The Trump administration, everyone listening, thank you so much.
I do hope the Trump administration didn't watch this, just as on principle and in practical. But
maybe they could have learned a few things.
That's true. They should. Well, we're gonna see how this recording worked out, and we're gonna post it, and we're gonna do another one.
And you're listening to it right now.
Amazing.
Magic. Okay, let's do this again soon, Lucy. How about July, August, January of 2035?
Perfect.
Put it in my calendar.
All right. Follow Non Serviam on various social medias if you want to. I would. All right.
I do, in fact. I think you should. If you shouldn't, you should be following. You shouldn't just I would do that. You should be following them, Lucy.
Perfect.